This is the second part of video covering station yards and marshalling yards. This video I'll be concentrating more on this marshalling yard. Okay. So this figure, it's a Bailey yard. Have you heard about Bailey Yard? Bailey Yard is the world's largest railroad classification yard. Here, the personnel there sort, service and repair locomotives and cars that are headed all across North America. It's owned and operated by the Union Pacific Railroad. Let's see more about these marshalling yards in this video. A station yard, it is defined as the tracks or a system of tracks that are laid on a level ground for the purpose of receiving, storing, sorting, making up of new trains, and also for the dispatch of vehicles. That is the purpose of providing a station yard, and there are certain sets of rules, regulations, and a signal system for controlling these movements. The yards are classified basically into four categories. They are passenger bogie yards, goods yards, marshalling yards, and locomotive yards. The main function of passenger bogie yard is to provide facilities for the safe movement of passengers and vehicles. The passenger platforms, we have already discussed this in the part 1 video, where passenger platforms are regarded as the passenger yards. So this yard is of specific importance at terminal stations or junctions where extra passenger bogies are accommodated and cleaning, washing or sorting of these to be done. Goods yard, the main function of goods yard is to provide facilities for receiving, loading and unloading, delivery of goods and the movement of goods vehicle. Practically all the stations except flag stations are provided with goods yard. The goods yard is similar to that of the goods platform that we discussed in part 1 video, and goods platforms are usually treated as goods yards. Loading and unloading is done at the goods platform, whereas the storing is being done at the goods shed. So in addition, separate goods sidings are also provided for storing and delivery of goods. So that is regarding goods yards. A marshalling yard is one where the trains and other loads are received, sorted out, and new trains are formed and dispatched onwards to their destination. The marshalling yards are usually provided at important junction stations, which act as distributing center for various destinations. In marshalling yards, loaded and empty goods wagons are first received from different lines, and then what is done is they are separated, then they are sorted and dispatched onwards in full trains for each line. While making full trains, the wagons are arranged in order of the stations to enable convenient detaching of wagons at wayside stations. So if some wagons are to be detached at wayside stations, in that order the wagons are arranged at the marshalling yards. So there are three important functions to be done at marshalling yard. They are the reception first of all, and then the sorting of these wagons, and again rearranging it and departure of these wagons. So depending on the kind of shunting operation that are employed at each marshalling yard, it can be classified into three: flat yards, gravity yards, and hump yards. The various factors to be considered or for the efficient functioning of marshalling yards, certain factors are to be considered. So first one is the through trains should be dealt properly. That is, the shunting operation should not interfere with the timetable of regular trains. So that is one of the main aspects to be kept in mind, and it should be kept parallel to the running trains. So for better efficiency of marshalling yard, the sorting out of terminating trains and internal load should be maximum in a given period, as the efficiency of yard will depend upon the number of sorted wagons rather than the storing of wagons. And another important aspect is the movement of wagons should be only in one direction, because the multiple yards, that is separate yards for up and down trains, should be constructed, and the wagons should move only in one direction. If the movements are happening in both the directions, then it may result in unnecessary delay and additional cost, and it may lead to conflicting movements. So in order to avoid that, there should be separate yards for up and downward direction. Okay, and repair facility should be provided on one or more of the sidings. Though the facilities like water column, ash pit, cork stop, weighing bridge, so all these requirements or all these facilities are required in marshalling yard, and they are connected to all important railway stations. Usually the marshalling yard should be constructed at all important junction stations, and particularly on stations where main roads are converging, and the goods yard should be nearer to the marshalling yard. So these were the important aspect that should be kept in mind while designing the marshalling yards. There will be the main line, and from the main line the train will be taken or received at this reception siding. So initially it will be received, and then it will be inspected, and if some maintenance or repair need to be done to a particular wagon, then that will be taken to the sixth siding where the repairs are being done. And if it is to be cleaned, this cleaning is will be done, and then it is taken to this sorting siding, and here it is again rearranged in a way it is been assigned to the next destination. So this sorting siding where the wagons are sorted and rearranged to form new trains. So that is marshalling yard. And the engines, earlier it was steam engines, so the facility that is being provided to house the locomotive, they are known as the locomotive yard. So they are the yards in which the locomotives are housed, and where all facilities for cooling, watering, repairing, oiling, cleaning, etc. are provided for servicing and stability of locomotives. So they are again installed at all junction stations. The locomotive yards are usually constructed on the same side as that of the marshalling yard. So the facility to be provided there is earlier it was steam engine, so it required ash pit where this need to be removed. The ash from the engines need to be removed. Then there will be a locomotive shed where this locomotive was stored and cleaning, etc. being done. Then after that there will be a turntable. So if the direction of the engine need to be done, so that is done with the help of this turntable. So usually the locomotive yards are also provided the same side as that of the marshalling yard. This is the layout of a marshalling yard. So let's first of all see the three types of marshalling yard depending upon how it is functioning. There is flat yard, hump and gravity yard. So let's see one by one. Flat yards, in the case of flat yards, the entire space of the yard is almost level, or the flat yard is constructed on a flat ground or with a gentle slope. And the sorting of all these wagons, or sorting works or movement of wagons, are carried out by means of engines which are running to and fro. This arrangement is compared closely to the other two yards. Compared to the gravitational yards and hump yards, flat yards are compared to be more costly because it requires more power consumption, because the engines are being used here in order to shift these, or in order to move the wagons, engines are being used. So because of that the power consumption is high. But this type of yard is justified where the available space is limited. So when compared to the other two types, the other two types require more land area, whereas in the case of flat yard, the space required is limited. And another important aspect is that a flat yard that doesn't have any hump, and it relies completely on the locomotives or the engines for all the car movement. So the train from the main track will be taken to this reception yard, and then from there it will be taken to the shunting neck, and the shunting operation is being done, and these wagons are detached and resorted in the separate order in which it is being assigned. And if it requires some kind of maintenance, it will be taken to these six sidings, and finally after sorting out and doing all these operations, again it will be taken to the departure yard. So it will be arranged in the order to which it is destined to. and finally it will be taken to the main line. So that is how the flat yard is working, and all these movements of wagons are being controlled by means of locomotive or by engine. This is a figure explaining the flat yard. You can see the entire area, the entire yard is on a level ground. The next type is a gravity yard or gravitational yard. So in this type of yards, the track are laid at such a gradient that the wagons can move of their own under the action of gravity. And that is why it is known as gravity yard. And if it need to some kind of control is required, then it is manually controlled by wagon brakes. So thus the movement of wagons are carried out by the action of gravity, and sometimes it may be accompanied by the engine power also. And the success of such gravitational yards requires certain slope for the formation. They are usually set up on a continuous falling gradient, and the engine or the power consumption is less because it uses only less engines, or less use of shunting engines are there. And gravity yards, the typical location of gravity yards are places where it was difficult to build a hump yard. So in those cases we go for providing the gravity yards. Now this is an example of gravity yard. You can see here a large area is required compared to that of the flat yard, and the wagons will be moving by its own under the action of gravity. Next is hump yard. Hump yard is the yard where a hump or a summit or an artificial hill they are provided, and the wagons are pushed upon the hump with the help of an engine. And this hump is located at entrance of the siding, and the wagons are then allowed to move into the siding down the hump under the action of gravity. Therefore, a hump yard can also be called as a gravitational yard, as the shunting operations are done under gravity. Modern practice is to use hump yards because shunting operations are done more quickly than flat or gravitational yards. The hump yards are also economical, as no power is required to move the wagons, and more control is there compared to that of the gravitational yard because it is being pushed up by the engine. So the movement of the wagons can be controlled to some extent. But there is some kind of uncertainty associated in hump yard also, like the rate of movement of wagons depends upon the weather condition, and again depend upon the weight of the wagons, axle boxes, the type of axle box, etc. We can see there are three slopes being provided here. The first one can be called as the initial stage, where it is the pushing end. It's a rising gradient in 1 in 150 or 1 in 175 is provided, and it's for a short length, say usually it is 180 meters. So this particular length, the engine will be pushing these wagons up, and then there is a middle stage. This is the hump. So the middle stage, a hump is provided on a level stretch, and finally at the final stage there is a sloping portion. So here the movement of wagons is under gravity. Usually it is being divided into multiple slopes. So initial slope will be high, and as the wagons move downward, the slope becomes more flatter. So there are three slopes that is being provided in the hump yard. So the cars or the wagons roll by gravity onto their destination tracks. These are the largest and most effective classification of yards with the largest shunting capacity. Often several thousands of cars can be operated in a day. The heart of these hump yard is the hump, as I already mentioned. Single cars or some coupled cars in a block are uncoupled just before at the crest of the hump and roll by gravity onto their destination track. So that is basically how it works. There are different means of controlling this. One is by the manual method. So the usual method is for men to run along the wagons and apply the wagon brakes at the exact place of stoppage. So that is how this can be controlled in the downward gradient. There are automatic method also. Automatic braking is also employed in some countries to stop the movement of wagons. In this method, fixing type blocks or bars known as retarders will be placed by the side of the rail, and these retarders are operated electrically, so that by pressing that, the it will press against the sides of the moving wheel, and the wagons can be brought to stop. So these are the different means by which the movement of the wagons can be controlled. So nowadays, hump yard is the most effective one, where the wagons, the shunting operation is mostly done under gravity, but it need to be pushed up with the help of a locomotive or an engine. That about the different type of yards. So let me explain you the working principle of hump yard with the help of this video. You can see a hump portion. The engines are pushing these wagons up the hump, and after reaching this level portion, you can see a person standing there who is detaching each of these wagons. So once he detaches each of these wagons, the track will also be set accordingly, and then these wagons, when it is detached, there is a falling gradient following that. So each of these wagons will be moving under gravity, and according to how these tracks are being set, it can be sorted or arranged in different sidings. So that is how uh, hump yard works. Okay, so initially it is an upward gradient where the engine pushes these wagons, and after reaching the top level it can be detached from the wagons, and thereafter these wagons will be moving under gravity, because this level stretch is followed by a falling gradient. So there these wagons will be moving under gravity. So this is how the hump yard works. this video we can see how the wagons are sorted. The tracks are being centralized and the wagons are with these directions according to how the tracks are being set. Locomotive yards, they are the yards in which the locomotives are housed and where the repairing, oiling, cleaning, servicing of these locomotives are done. Earlier when it was steam engine, the cooling as well as watering of these engines are also being done at the locomotive yard. Now we can see what are the requirements of a locomotive yard. The basic requirements of a locomotive yard. The first thing is how the tracks are being laid. So the tracks in the locomotive yard should be so arranged that the service of the engine can be done in proper sequence without interfering with other vehicles. And another aspect is the turntable. A turntable is a feature that is provided to turn the direction of the engine. The line from the traffic yard to the turntables. The line from the traffic yard to the turntable, it should be clear, and the turntable should not act as an obstruction to any of the locomotive which are entering into the yard. And there should always be an extra emergency entrance line from the traffic yard. At case of emergency, so this subsidiary line can be used. Okay, this extra line that is being provided is known as the subsidiary line. So there should be provision for this subsidiary line. So if some kind of derailment happens, then this subsidiary line can be used. Then another thing is the length of the loop line for the fuel platform should be such as to accommodate the longest train, and the number and length of siding should be sufficient to accommodate the maximum number of engines that is likely to be using this yard. Then there should be provision for coal stacking and also ash pumping. So this was for the steam engine. Okay. Now this is being rarely used, but there should be engine shed, inspection pitch should be there, turntable should be there, there should be repair shed. So all these features are required in a locomotive yard. Then another important aspect is the six sidings that should be provided, also be easily accessible from the loco yard. The loco well and overhead tank should be near the loco shed, and sufficient space should be left in the yard for future expansion if possible. So these are the basic requirements of a locomotive yard. For the efficient running of trains, safety of traffic, repairing, cleaning, examining of locomotive, etc. Some equipments and machineries are required in stations. Okay. So these equipments are known as station equipments. The turntables, they are used for changing the direction of a locomotive, like that of a triangle. So we discussed about the triangle when we were discussing the track junction in points and crossings. So similar to that, the turntable is also changing the direction of the engine. But these are usually provided when the availability of space is limited. The turntable is a costlier installation compared to that of a triangle. So let's see how this works. So when, say, let's consider this particular engine. If this engine need to be sent in another direction, say for example, if this engine need to be sent in this particular direction, so what is being done is, first of all, the turntable will be rotated about its pivot. It's pivoted at the center, so it will be turned with respect to its, or it's rotated about its pivot till the track on the turntable comes in line with the track on which the engine is standing. So then at this position the turntable will be locked by means of bolt, and the engine comes on to the turntable. Then the bolts are again removed and the turntable, they are rotated, and the turntable is rotated till the tracks on the turntable which comes in line with the track on which the engine is to be sent or diverted. Okay. Again, the bolts can be inserted, the turntable can be lowered, and the engine can run out of this turntable in the direction in which it is destined. So that is how the turntable works. This is Palay turntable in Jaffna, Sri Lanka. This can be operated either mechanically or manually. Here there is only one direction, so it is just being used to reverse the direction of the engine. But there can be, if the tracks are radiating from this turntable, the engine can be diverted in any direction. A triangle is a kind of track junction that is provided to turn the direction of engine. We have discussed this in detail when discussing these points and crossings and the different type of track junctions. Next is ash pits. They are provided to collect the ashes from the locomotive. They are generally 1.06 meter PE, and the length is slightly more than that of the length of the locomotive. They rest on masonry or concrete walls, and the rails are fixed on longitudinal beams provided at the top of these walls. But nowadays these ash pits are rarely used because steam engines are rare. Railway engine sheds are provided at terminal stations, junctions, and other locations around the railway. They are provided to accommodate the locomotives which are meant for servicing. So this servicing could be a simple task, just like changing brake blocks, or it may be some more complex tasks that involve dismantling and repairing of engines. There are mainly two types of engine sheds depending on shape. One is a rectangular type one, shown in first figure, and the next one is a circular type one. The facilities required are it require an office, a store, repair shop. It should have an examination pit. There should be water columns, some, etc. Whereas in the case of circular type, other than this, it requires a turntable to turn the direction because it is circular in shape. So, in order to accommodate these engines in this roundhouse, turntable are required to turn the direction of the engine. So these are basically this is all about engine shed. So let's see the rectangular and the circular one. Rectangular type engine sheds. In this type of engine sheds, two parallel tracks are laid, which this engine shed it can be open at both ends or it can be open at just one end, which means at one end, or it can be at both ends. So the engine can come from one end and leave the shed from the other end. The problem associated with this is it requires more space. Okay. Uh, Rectangular type of engine sheds are widely being used in India. The next is circular type. In case the circular type engine shed, this type consists of radiating tracks and a circular structure known as the roundhouse. A turntable is also provided with the help of turntable. The incoming locomotive is put on the unoccupied track of the shed. It needs less space, but skilled labor is needed for the construction as well as its operation. When you go to a railway museum, you can see this kind of arrangement, which are known as water columns or water crane. So, this is a device used for delivering a large volume of water into the tank of a steam locomotive. Because a steam locomotive it consumes large quantity of water, and water cranes were a pivotal part of railway equipment. And they are often situated at the end of a platform so that water could be refilled during a stop at the station. Uh, that's all about water columns. Now you can rarely see these water columns on the platform. To examine the engine from beneath, the examination pits are used or constructed. The examination pit they rest on masonry or concrete walls, and the rails are fixed on longitudinal beams provided at the top of the walls. Transverser is a kind of arrangement that is used to shift the position of the vehicles or locomotive sideways. So they provide an arrangement of transversing the engines and vehicles from one track to another parallel track. So the same can be achieved through the crossovers. When discussing the track junction, I discussed about that, but that require a larger area, whereas transverser requires only a limited area. So transversers are preferred to turnouts or crossovers. It consists of a platform which are mounted on rollers. Vehicles that to be shifted is placed on the transverser, and then the transverse is moved sideways and adjusted to the parallel track where the vehicle is to be placed. So that is how the transverser works. Next is derailing switch is an ordinary point switch. The switch is open in the normal position and is generally provided near the dead end of the siding. Any vehicle which is passing over it shall be derailed because of the break of continuity of rails. And to protect that, a sandham will also be provided. Let's see that. Sandhams they are the method for checking the vehicle derailment. So once it moves through the derailing switch, this wagons need to be brought to rest, for which the sandhams are used. So it is to it's a method of checking the movement of the vehicle. The rail in the dead end siding after some fixed distance gets embedded in the sandham, and thereby the vehicle which are entering into this derailing switch can be brought to rest. To weigh the rolling stock, these weigh bridges are used. So these are level platforms with rails that are connected to the main track. Here the beam rests on the knife edge and it's attached to the lever, and this loaded wagon can be taken over these rails, and the lever mechanism is activated and the weight is indicated. Next is level crossing. when a railway line and a road cross each other at the same level. So that creates a level crossing. Surface of the road kept at same level, and the grooves are left in the road surface for fixing the rails. So there are two types of classification based on the nature of the road, nature of traffic on road, and number of trains that are passing over the level crossing. It's been classified into different types. You don't have to go into the details of this level crossing classification. I have just listed this. That's all for today's video. Thank you.